And it certainly takes a sizable amount of effort to hold back tears. Looking at this picture, if you have your ancestors, if you have some ancestors that went through this terrible, terrible event, le grand dérangement, la déportation des Acadiens, or the 1755, of course, expulsion, if you will. By who? By the English, right? The British Crown. The British Crown deported, if you will, and of course that's a crime against humanity. It's getting really, the whole point was to assimilate us and all that stuff, and to basically erase our culture, erase our identity. And so now, what do we have here? We have Dr. Michel Dow actively participating with the English to destroy the Acadian families. And, not to mention, she did marry an English man. Mr. Dow is has some, I'm not 100% sure as to his family lineage, but he doesn't speak any French. Well, I think he learned French. He does speak some French, but as for his blood, it's certainly not French, right? So she's actively, this is treason against her own people, And then some could argue, well, it's a conquered people and all that stuff. It certainly is, and whoever would make that argument is certainly right. But it's tragic, very, very tragic. But the whole point about the mass murder of, okay, so she's an Acadian, right? And all her family, because we share the same family lineage. All her family is from the Acadian population, and she is actively participating in killing Acadian children, which is exactly what's going on. So that's terrible. This picture here is quite. It's an artist rendition, but it does offer some a view into what actually happened here. So here's the points that we're going to read here. All right. So the 1755 Acadian deportation, known as Le Grand Dénoncement, was an attempt by the British to erase an entire people. Right? Ripping families apart. So the husband would go into one ship, and the wife would go into another ship. The father and the son would be separated, and all this stuff. Exactly like what's going on today. It was quite terrible. And a side point to this whole thing was the terrible story of the Duke William's Noël Doiron, which was a terrible thing where the ship, the ship unfortunately sank in the North Atlantic Ocean, killing Noël Doiron and his entire family, right? The entire family of that, and the village of Noël, Nova Scotia, was named in his honor. But this travesty is still going on today. Except more. It's more so a tragedy. What's going on here is worse than what has happened in the past. All right. Let's read this again because I'm getting a little bit off track here. So the 1755 Acadian deportation, known as Le Grand Dérangement, la déportation des Acadiens, was an attempt by the British to erase an entire people. Right? Ripping families apart, seizing their lands, and scattering them across the world. It was an act of ethnic cleansing, certainly was. And yet, despite the suffering the Acadians endured, they rebuilt, held onto their language and culture, and carried forward their traditions. Now, centuries later, an Acadian doctor, paid by the British Crown, is systematically destroying the next generation of Acadians. This is not just betrayal, it is the ultimate treason against her own people. She takes a salary funded by the very government that once tried to erase her ancestors. Instead of healing Acadians, she is actively participating in their continued destruction. Would the Acadians of 1755 recognize their descendants today? Would they have fought so hard for survival if they knew that their own kin would be the ones to finish the work of their oppressors? What a great point, huh? What a great point, and a tragic story. All right, so let's go back and look at these the faces of despair on this woman, that she knows that not only her life is over, but also if she were to see what's happening today, her entire culture is being destroyed, not by the English, but by the Acadians, which are helping the English to destroy the Acadians, and living in a big, comfy brick house, married to an English, right? That's what's going on. All right, so what's going on here is that Dr. Michel Dow is married to an Englishman, actively participating in killing the Acadians, right? And profiting from it. She's exceedingly wealthy, right? And the house is exceedingly luxurious, right? That she's living in. The camp next to the lake is also exceedingly luxurious. That would be that there's no need for such greed and everything like that. And it's at the expense of who? Well, these small boys and small girls that have lost their lives due to these abortifacients, and that is, of course, the drug that is not preventing the pregnancy, but actively, killing that small boy or small girl at the stage of pregnancy, which is known as implantation, right? So the conception happens. There's a new DNA. There's a new Acadian baby. There's a new Acadian baby. And then because of her, she's the one that put her signature on the prescription pad. All right, so there's no getting away from this. Right? She's the one that put her signature on the prescription pad. And she, failed to inform them that this drug was an abortifacient. She failed to inform them that this drug would not prevent the pregnancy, but it would kill the baby that would have been conceived and would have otherwise grown into a man or a woman capable of such wonderful things, right? And the every you got to remember, every child is a separate victim, right? And they are Acadians, and she's actively participating in destroying her own culture. It is ironic that she's married to an Englishman. It is, but I mean, that doesn't really matter. I mean, there's no guilty, act on the part of the husband, so I'm not going to, go on that. But the guilt fully rests on her. Now, she is guilty of destroying her own culture, if you can imagine that, destroying her own father's grandson, if you can imagine such a thing. And it was suggested in a video that she destroyed her own children, maybe or maybe not, right? So that you can see that in the video of, did Dr. Dow actually take these abortifacients herself? Destroying your own children, destroying your father's grandson or granddaughter, and destroying your culture is what Dr. Dow is guilty of. If you can imagine such a thing. But it's true. I mean, I don't think any reasonable argument can be made against this. But if they can, please do send me a note, and I will immediately correct any of these facts. Because that's the only thing I want, is to be accurate in facts here. There's no accusations. It's just accusations without any evidence. There certainly is. The facts will prove that what I'm saying is true. All right, thank you very much for tuning. I'll see you in the next video.